there are places in Britain where the ground itself holds the secret. Stand on the shoreline at Seascale, in the far west of Cumbria, and the Irish Sea stretches grey and flat toward the horizon. The beach appears ordinary enough, a little wind, a little quiet. But in the mud beneath your feet, in concentrations still detectable today, lies plutonium. Not from some distant catastrophe carried in on the tide. From here. From Windscale, the works just up the coast, whose chimneys still rise against the sky, a site that Britain constructed in secret, operated in secret, and when something went catastrophically wrong, buried in secret for nearly 30 years. This is the story of Windscale. The most dangerous industrial site Britain ever ran. The most expensive it has ever tried to dismantle. A place born from the ambitions of a nation that had helped split the atom and then been locked out of the prize. A place that delivered Britain's nuclear capability, poisoned its own coastline in the name of science, then changed its name and hoped the world would move on. It has not moved on. The bill stands at £136 billion. The clean-up runs until the year 2125. That is the end. The beginning is smaller and quieter. It starts in 1942 on a flat stretch of Cumberland farmland beside the River Calder, where a Royal Ordnance munitions factory rises during the war years. Practical and unremarkable, producing the conventional instruments of conflict. When peace arrives, the site transfers briefly to Courtaulds, the textiles company, which considers converting it to rayon manufacture. A rayon mill. That is nearly what it became. Then the world shifted the calculation. In 1946, the United States passed the Macmillan Act, cutting Britain out of atomic collaboration overnight. The country that had contributed scientists to the Manhattan Project, that had watched the Trinity test from the inside, found itself locked out of American nuclear knowledge entirely. The British government drew one conclusion: build the bomb alone. The Ministry of Supply reacquired the Calder site in 1947, and two air-cooled graphite reactors, known as piles, were constructed with extraordinary urgency. The first reached criticality in 1950. By 1952, it had yielded the plutonium used in Britain's first nuclear weapon test. A nation that had nearly manufactured synthetic fabric was now producing the cores of atomic bombs. 5,000 construction workers had raised the complex at the height of the build. The chimneys climbed 250 feet. Above each one, at the insistence of physicist John Cockcroft, then directing Britain's nuclear research at the Atomic Energy Research Establishment at Harwell, sat a bank of filters, installed at extra cost, dismissed by colleagues as a needless extravagance. They called them Cockcroft's Folly. That name did not survive what came next. Through the early 1950s, Windscale continued building its standing. In 1956, Queen Elizabeth opened Calder Hall on the same site, the world's first commercial nuclear power station. Britain did not simply possess the bomb. It was lighting homes with the atom. The ambition was genuine, and at that moment it appeared magnificent, still expanding, still producing, still extraordinary. Beneath the surface, the pressures were already becoming dangerous. By 1957, the government required plutonium not only for atomic weapons, but for the new hydrogen bomb program. Production targets accelerated. The piles were being pushed harder. On the 8th of October that year, operators initiated a routine energy release procedure inside pile number 1. Something failed to respond as expected. Temperatures climbed. By the 10th, uranium fuel cartridges deep inside the reactor had caught fire. The fire burned for 3 days. It was later classified Level 5 on the International Nuclear Event Scale, the same rating as 3 Mile Island, 2 full levels below Chernobyl's Level 7, but sufficient to place Windscale among the most serious nuclear accidents ever recorded. Deputy General Manager Tom Twohy took charge of what was becoming an uncontrollable situation, climbing to the top of the reactor stack repeatedly to peer into the core, assessing the damage at close range, absorbing levels of radiation that would alarm any modern safety assessment. The eventual decision to flood the reactor with water carried its own risk of a catastrophic steam explosion. It did not explode. The fire died. But what had already left the stack could not be recalled. An estimated 740 terabecquerels of iodine, 131 escaped, along with cesium, polonium, and other isotopes. Milk from farms across Cumberland and North Lancashire was condemned, with around 2 million litres destroyed in the weeks that followed. The internal inquiry concluded that an accelerated production schedule, driven by political pressure from above, had overstrained a reactor already running at the edge of its tolerances. One alternative explanation points to a specific cartridge failure as the initiating event, suggesting a materials problem rather than management pressure alone. Both accounts carry partial weight. What is not disputed is that the report identifying political responsibility was suppressed. The inquiry had been chaired by William Penny, the physicist who had led Britain's first nuclear weapon program. His findings were damaging. Prime Minister Harold Macmillan ordered the report heavily censored before publication. The reasoning, which only surfaced decades later, was strategic. Britain needed a credible hydrogen bomb to persuade the United States to resume nuclear cooperation, and a published finding that pressure from above had caused a reactor fire would endanger those negotiations. The polonium release went unmentioned in any public version for years. The workers who had contained the disaster were, in some later accounts, positioned as responsible for failures that had originated elsewhere entirely. Pile number 1 was sealed. It has never been reopened. Approximately 15 tons of uranium fuel remain inside it today. Through the following decades, the site continued operating under a different logic. It became a reprocessing facility, handling spent nuclear fuel from British reactors and, under commercial contracts, from West Germany and Japan. Radioactive discharges into the Irish Sea ran at levels the operator later admitted were 100 times those of the present day. By multiple scientific assessments, the Irish Sea became the most radioactively contaminated body of water in the world during this period, though that precise characterization remains contested. In 1983, a Yorkshire television documentary, broadcast under the title Windscale, The Nuclear Laundry, altered everything the public believed it knew, alleging that childhood leukemia rates in the nearby village of Seascale ran 10 times the national average. Within weeks, a 200-metre exclusion zone appeared along the local beach. Within months, it stretched 40 kilometres. Testing returned contamination figures between 100 and 1,000 times the levels previously declared. The name Windscale had already been retired in 1981, replaced by Sellafield, a clean designation for a damaged reputation. The rebranding did not hold. Nothing was clean. The contamination persisted, measurable and accumulating in the sediment, indifferent to what the facility chose to call itself. British Nuclear Fuels Limited, the site's operator, emerged as technically insolvent in 2001, carrying liabilities of approximately £35 billion. The bulk of them arising from the site's early military work before the company's formation. Ownership transferred to the state's Nuclear Decommissioning Authority in 2002. The last reactor closed in 2003. Among the most hazardous structures now awaiting dismantlement is the B-30 storage pond, one of the first-generation reprocessing facilities open to the sky, holding decades of accumulated spent fuel in water that has turned black. Today, the site holds roughly 85% of Britain's entire nuclear waste inventory. Over 11,500 people report to work there, not generating energy, but containing what earlier decades left behind. The full decommissioning, according to current assessments, will not conclude until the year 2125, at a cost on an undiscounted basis of £136 billion. That is what the beach at Seascale is worth now. Where Cockcroft's Folly once stood, ridiculed and then vindicated, the sealed reactor still waits. The plutonium remains in the mud. The bill keeps rising. Britain constructed the most dangerous industrial site in its history, then attempted to rename it, then spent 70 years learning that some things cannot simply be relabeled and walked away from. The atom does not forget. Neither does the ground.